for like 45 minutes. Oh.
Yes, as we're live. Chat, if you heard that, we're aiming 45 minutes on the Seahawks releasing Quandre Diggs, releasing Jamal Adams, and releasing Will Dissly. Now, chat, we will have a preamble, but let us know, what order do you think we should do them in? Because we could do it most shocking to least shocking. We could do it, we have the most to say on that player versus the least to say on that player. I think that changes the order a lot, but yeah, chat, let us know. Anyway, Griff, preamble topics.
Oh, my glasses broke, which is
No.
Yeah, but I'll get them fixed tomorrow.
No, that's awful.
Yeah, I'll get them fixed. It's all right.
How did they break? Did you sit on them? I feel like if I had glasses, I'd sit on them all the time.
So what happened was I normally put them in my glasses case, but I didn't. I put them on my windowsill. And then in the night, they must have fallen off the windowsill. I guess I didn't do it very well. Like the windowsill next to next to my bed.
Was it like a windy night, maybe?
Oh, you know what? Okay, no, I remember now. So my dog comes running in. He wants to be let out. So he's like all excited. So he runs toward me. And then his tail swipes it off the windowsill. And then he stomps on them. So that was pretty funny. So I went and got them repaired. They fixed it. They said, yeah, we can fix it. But then the screw they put in popped out again. So I'm going to see if they can get fixed, but I'll need to get a new pair.
Sounds like you need to get a new glasses fixer.
Yeah, well, it's not their fault. I think the grooves stripped, like the rifling. But
disgusting.
Hey, what are you going to do?
Well, I'd complain.
Well, I've done my fair share of complaining.
Oh.
But that can only provide so much catharsis. Ultimately, I'm only going to be able to remedy this situation if I can get down to the optician, excuse me, or optometrist, or both. Anyway, that's all I got.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Right, should we get into it?
Yeah, hit it, Matty.
Welcome to the Seattle Overload podcast, where it seems to be becoming a yearly theme now in this kind of new era of Seahawks football, I guess, or the post-Russell Wilson era. But there's shock Seahawks news. Some of it's shocking, some of it isn't, but there's a triple release of players. Free safety Quandre Diggs released, Jamal Adams released, and then also tight end Will Dissly released. By doing this move, Seattle is freeing up some cap space. The release of Will Dissly saves $7 million in cash for this season. The release of Quandre Diggs frees up $11 million of cap. And Jamal Adams was a pre-June the 1st release, so it frees up some other stuff too.
Matty, hold up. The chat and I are in congruence here. Are you on the right mic right now?
No, but
ooh, bang, it's good.
Ronald, right? Here's the thing. Why did it take Ronald to notice that, Griffin, not you?
No, Henry noticed it first.
And Henry.
See, Matty, I will take your voice in any microphone. That's where I'm at.
Will you?
So long as
You'll take me in any mic.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't even worry about it. Anyway, you were saying?
Well, I think we should redo it for the audio people. No. We have to, Griff.
They'll be fine. Audio people, we love you. You'll be fine.
Okay. My apologies, chat. So they've saved some money. What a shambles. They've saved, per over the cap, that Seattle now has $36.2 million in overall cap space, and then at $28.7 million in effective cap space. Jason Fitzgerald of Over the Cap, Jason OTC, wrote an article on this situation, which is kind of really clears things up. The dead money between Quandre Diggs and Jamal Adams accounts for $31.09 million in 2024, a number that's higher than all but two teams have allocated to all of the safeties on their roster this year. And this is historically a $13.33 million total more than any team ever's allocated to dead money on safeties in a single season. That's what happens when you pay two safeties really high and then release them. And Disley's contract, which we'll, I guess, dive into, was a 3-year, $24 million deal, which he signed in 2022. And now he accounts for $3.1 million in dead money. So, there you go. They have they're 16th in total cap space for 2024, which ranks 16th in the NFL. And they're first in dead money with $34.4 million on their books. Should we start with Will Dissly, Griff?
Sure. I don't really think it matters what order we start in, but...
Well, it does, because we have to talk about them in that order, you see.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, Will Dissly. Not a William. Interesting. Anyway. Will, fourth... Fourth round pick out of what?
Oh, we're on fire. Fourth round pick out of Washington, as in Washington Huskies. Hey chat, it's the See Mike Spin Move show. So yeah, they cut for audio only people. I realized you wouldn't be able to detect this. Matty had to step out for a second, and he's back. I think he's figuring out his audio. In the meantime, yeah. So, testing. Matty's testing. Are we in here?
Right. Okay. Let's let's try that again, shall we? Griff, are you ready for Will Dissly?
Yeah.
Fourth round pick out of Washington, and obviously he looked really promising. He looked like Gronk when he first came into the league, and then unfortunately,
he had some early games of 2018. Yeah.
Didn't he do some disgusting things against the Broncos? 3 catches, 105 yards, and a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
But then he suffered a patella tendon injury, and then the following season, it was cut short in week 6 after suffering an Achilles injury. So what that meant was with Dissly, you never got what his peak probably was. He was never the quickest player anyway, but so, kind of helped him probably in his recovery, in that he had skills which weren't just reliant on athleticism or speed. But yeah, we never probably saw the best of what he could have been. That being said, he did earn a payday through his run blocking primarily, but he's just reliable. I think smart, tough, reliable. What the Seahawks like, albeit with those 2 injuries in the first 2 years. But then he was able to stay kind of durable, and was kind of a big part of their identity, and I think a cultural presence. And that's how he earned a 3-year, $24 million contract. I should say at the time that was signed, I was like, that does feel slightly high, but, they clearly want to keep him around. I know some people were like, that is ridiculously high for a guy who, in terms of his pass catching production, had never been doing serious things. And arguably, you'd say that's the type of player you should be able to draft the replacement for. You shouldn't pay.
Right.
So, sad for Dissly, but good that he got paid. And I'm sure if the price is right, Seattle might entertain bringing him back, given that Colby Parkinson is a free agent, Noah Fant is a free agent. I would be moderately surprised if Dissly ain't hasn't been told like, hey, we'd be open to having you back at the right price.
Right.
On a similar vein, I'd be surprised if another team doesn't want to kind of sniff around Disley because he's an NFL vet who can run block.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he's kind of a classic wide tight end that doesn't really stretch the field. I mean, he can do some things at the second level, but ultimately injuries, the cap hit was too steep. And he just isn't, even if he, wasn't injured, even if he was used more, like he probably could have been one of those guys that could have gotten you maybe 600 yards if you were really throwing at him. Like he does have hands, like he actually has pretty good body control, but it's just not that explosive. I think he's a good player to have on your roster. So yeah, if they can bring him back at a vet minimum, that would be pretty cool. Because I think he can kind of enhance the tight end room via the ensemble. But you're not going out of your way to try to keep him on your team. So I totally understand this move. Kind of a no-brainer, really.
Isn't the NFL crazy how you can, in 2022, you can be signed to what reads as a 3-year, $24 million deal. And then all of a sudden, at that point afterwards, just 2 off seasons later, suddenly you're released and we're talking about the same team bringing you back for the vet minimum.
Right.
A cutthroat business. And this, he turns 28 in July, so he could probably get a few more years in the NFL if he wanted to. He's managed, like I said, to stay healthy, relatively healthy since those injuries to start off with. I know he got a bit banged up last year, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he couldn't play very many snaps this year. He has an 80% career completion rate.
Is that good, Griff?
That's quite good. Now, obviously, the depth of target isn't egregious, but I mean, he's actually been extremely efficient for them when he's actually used. But again, like you should be prioritizing Noah Fant in the route patterns more. Colby Parkinson's intriguing because he's 6'7", has some ball skills. So I mean, I'm not too broken up about it, but it makes sense. I still think he's a useful player. So hopefully he's getting substantial snaps next season wherever he goes. But beyond that, I mean, I don't have any further Will Disley thoughts.
Yeah, and I should have said even before we went into Disley, on the subject of this cap space, Seattle has 2 major pending free agents, and they're guys who, well, Leonard Williams will command a high salary, and Jordan Brooks won't be as high as if he'd been able to stay healthy. But if you're serious about re-signing Brooks, you need to table a really good offer for him and what he can bring and his rare kind of skill set. Growing increasingly rare in the NFL, that ability to be that size, that speed, and then do what he can do in coverage. So that's why this cap space is particularly important. Yeah, Griff, before we get into the 2 safeties, this is kind of crazy to me because, as I said, Disley turns 28 in July. Jamal Adams is turning 29 this October, and Quandre Diggs is 31. Happy birthday to him for January 22nd. This is the team who they're already young, but they're getting even younger. And it leaves them currently, and yes, there's the draft to happen, and like I said, Jordan Brooks, maybe they can get that done a bit quicker to fill a hole. But Leonard Williams, maybe they get that done to fill a hole as well. But there's no obvious like Disley, the tight end thing. They're creating a hole on the roster essentially, and the same for safety, where when you cut your starting free safety and you cut your starting strong safety / big nickel from last year. That leaves them, a tight end, as I've explained, to have to see. Griff, would you bring Parkinson or Fant back into the picture? Very much a Price is Right thing.
Right. I mean, as always, yeah. My thing is I would try to, but like not at the expense of, I mean, at this point, like, yeah, they got cap savings from cutting Diggs and Adams, but hopefully they go after someone in free agency at safety, right? So I would prioritize Williams, Brooks, and safety in free agency before I would prioritize Fant. If it's surprising and Fant only requires $4 or $5 million, then do it, right? I imagine Colby probably isn't looking at more than 3. I could be wrong, but I just don't think he is. So I feel like Colby can fit into it. I mean, I don't value tight end continuity that much. I think that you can go sign a guy at a vet minimum and go draft 2 and be fine at tight end if you're going to live in 11 personnel. So there's a lot of different. I don't think they can go wrong at tight end, whatever they do, because the tight end position, it doesn't have to be that important for them. If you happen to roster a really good tight end, then just use him accordingly. That can be Fant. Fant is, I don't think we're like the biggest Fant fans, but I mean, he has a skill set, right? I mean, there probably is more than what Seattle did with him this past year. So with all that said, I'm down for whatever they want to do at tight end, really. But I just don't, it can't be at the expense of more important players, is how I see it.
Right. And then on the similar subject of creating a hole, which is somewhat uncommon for John Schneider heading into a draft. He likes to have every position filled to some degree. And I get maybe he views it as this, but the projected starters at safety are Julian Love and Kobe Bryant. Now you have Jarek Reed, who was a special team standout. I think he was named to an all-rookie team for his special teams contributions last year. Obviously got hurt early, or midway through the season, but I highlighted his special teams play in a YouTube video. He was playing that well, and he did some interesting things that we like the look of and broke down in the preseason as a safety. So maybe they're feeling positive about a day 3 pick and his ability to come in and compete for that starting spot. Kobe Bryant flashed in the preseason as a strong safety, but that is quite going from like a Quandre Diggs to that is quite the drop off.
Yeah. I mean, the Diggs cut, the Diggs cut, it definitely felt like a 50-50 thing. I mean, like right away you see the rationale and the reasoning, right? The age and the cap hit. So I didn't expect him to be on the team at that cap hit for 2024. I thought it was either he's getting cut or they'll try to restructure or extend. I think the latter would have been ideal. I still think he's a really good safety, especially in coverage, which is like 80-90% of what they're paying him to do. I think the whole like run defense and missed tackle thing, I think is twofold. One, I'm confused by it a little bit because he has always missed tackles. So, I mean, like he had a higher, this like 2023 wasn't even his worst year in terms of missed tackles as a Seahawk. That was 2019, his first year when everyone was celebrating him. But secondly, I also think that some of those tackles that stick out in people's mind, I'm not saying that's actually not bad. I don't know, they are bad. But I view that more as not necessarily a sign of him getting worse at tackling in the open field so much as those situations where he would miss a tackle are more frequent. And those situations are dictated by other players. It's other players' mistakes. If the ball is leaking out to the third level in the run game, you don't have a free safety problem. I don't care if he's missing tackles. You have everybody else problem if that's happening. So if you had better front seven play, Quandre Diggs missed tackles go down, and you're still getting all the benefits and coverage. He did not give up seams. He didn't give up posts. He didn't give up overs. I mean, they even rotated him in the underneath more. And Matty, you wrote an article on it. Their numbers improved on targets over the middle because Bobby Wagner was kind of a problem there. So, but that said, I'm also I would say he is a fit in the Ravens defense because, I mean, he's kind of a scheme-proof player for the most part.
He can play anything high, right? He can do any of the high stuff.
And like what Seattle used him to do is not that different than what Macdonald does in terms of how the safeties are actually coached within like quarters, within cover 2. Like it's all pretty universal stuff. It would be one thing if it was like Seattle was playing the legit cover 3, cover 1 world from 8 years ago and they switched to it. Then you'd say, okay, is he a fit? But I mean, Seattle has done so many different things the last 4 years that Diggs has been here. He absolutely would have been a fit, but still, like they clearly were erring on the side of he's only getting older. He could fall off a cliff. We need the cap money. The free agency class is not terrible. It's definitely stronger than the draft. It's not a great safety draft. Um, but you know, it's like it's understandable. As it stands right now, though, your best safety being Julian Love, who I know I'm lower on him than you are, but I don't think either of us are particularly high on him. I don't feel great him being your best safety on the team, and so obviously, like you said, Kobe Bryant. I mean, I'm not opposed to the idea of him, you know, improving, and I'm actually pretty high on Jarek Reed as, you know, realistically high you can be on a 6th round pick who's only really played special team snaps because we liked his preseason last year. But beyond that, like, no, you're not going into 2024 in this moment confident at safety. So it's all just dependent on what they do at, you know, in free agency and draft. So we have to let the rest of the process play out. But as of right now, yeah, they're up. They gotta make the right decisions, right?
Yeah, Diggs was the move that was always theorized by people just looking at Seattle's cap situation, because you do get $11 million in cap space. Like, his contract was constructed in that way that it started to feel like if they really needed cap space, that was a move to make. That being said, you know, there's Brian Monet's presumably to come. You might want to release Nick Ballore. I think it's only $3 million. Monet, I think $6 million. But you know, it's 9. It's getting up to the Diggs type of area. So yeah, I can understand that they might need all this cap space and everything. But he was a really good player, a really good safety, and he had a solid year last year on a terrible defense. And to your point, Griff, the free safety does have to be the backstop of the defense and make the tackles. But you know, a lot of the times I've seen, like, you know, Diggs' angles criticized or whatnot, and sometimes his angles were a bit off, and you know, that was not his best year last year, but he still played solid enough football. And I think if the supporting cast around him had been better, then more of the picks would have happened, then more of the interceptions would have happened. But also, a lot of the time as a free safety, your angle of pursuit is you're pressing hard downhill and then curving towards the sideline like a banana curve, or like running the alley. And you are reliant on every other player, like any defender, but it's especially true of a free safety or a guy coming down from the post. You're relying on any other player in the run support to win their leverage. And a lot of the times that didn't happen. So then Diggs is put in he ends up looking bad because he's the final guy to arrive, because that's where he's coming from. So I really do think a lot of the issues which attributed to Diggs are actually really not on Diggs, and more on the fact that the defense last year, at least from an end product perspective, but individual performances as well, was abysmal. Really, really poor. And I will say with Diggs, watching his body language just on the field and how frustrated he got, maybe that's someone they're like, oh, we're not sure about building around that. But then his teammate seems to really like him. I think he's just wears his heart on his sleeve in that respect, and he cares. Which, is it a crime to care? No, I think it's probably a good thing. So yeah, that's unfortunate, and it's just an amazing story, because Seattle ended up getting him after some really rough years of safety play after Earl Thomas and how that ended, which was tragic. You got Tedrick Thompson, who, I mean, he was put in a really tough situation and didn't succeed. And somehow, thanks to Matt Patricia, Seattle acquired Diggs in 2019, trading a 5th round pick for Diggs and a 7th round pick from the Lions. And he became a Pro Bowler in his first year. And he took to the cover 3 stuff really well. And even with Seattle diversifying their coverage a bit more and really mixing up more and blending into split safety stuff, as you've described, Griff, he was really, really solid and really impressive. And I think back to that remarkable interception against the Rams where he speed turns after, I think, someone messed up slightly, and catches the ball. Incredible ball skills and ball tracking. And
yeah,
I mean,
just safety.
There you go. And 5'9". So yeah, as someone who's 5'10", that's a cool height.
Which is average height for the time period. 5'10".
Yeah, exactly. So it's cool. I tweeted kind of in my feels a bit, saying I'm surprised they weren't able to get a meaningful pick for Diggs. Obviously, his contract would have made that more difficult, but it is kind of, again, a reminder of how crazy the NFL is, that this guy who is a 3 times Pro Bowler, 2020, 2021, 2022, with the Seahawks, the defense has one down year, and suddenly, bang, you're gone. You're 31, you're gone. I think he has... Honestly, he's so smart and so good at playing from depth that I feel he could play for a fair bit longer. Like, I don't see any reason he couldn't have 3 or 4 more years of like high level play. And I hope for his sake that, well, hopefully he gets to pick where he goes, and it's a great fit for him. Or, you know, if he doesn't want to play anymore, he doesn't want to play anymore. But I'd imagine if you're a Super Bowl team and you're just like, we just need a guy who can play any basically coverage from a deep perspective and get us right. That's all we need, and be a likable guy in the locker room, and that's what Quandre Diggs can be.
Yeah, he's not young, he's old, but people are kind of talking about him like he's 33, 34. I mean, he just turned 31, so he just finished his age 30 season.
Right.
He's still in the middle of it. Like, yeah, the fall off could happen, but he very well could have 2 to 4 more seasons of high quality football. There are some safeties that, you know, that stick around that way.
And he was never the fastest player anyway. Like and I don't
to the combine.
Yeah, and I know people may think that they saw him kind of slowing down last year. I don't know so much if it was that. It's more that he's in worse spots, worse scenarios because of the surrounding play. Yeah. And so suddenly you look a bit more exposed because you're not meant to be in that position.
Right. It is certainly possible that he maybe didn't want to hit as hard with uncertain with his what was his tibia injury, or is it fibula? But I mean, he definitely made some hits this year though. At the same time,
against the Rams, against the Rams, he was throwing his body at people like early in the season, and yeah, you get banged up and you're on a bad team. I don't think he quit though, but yeah. Okay, so Diggs was slightly surprising to me because of just what a challenge Seattle now has with their roster. And I think the other factor to him, he probably doesn't get enough credit because the way the NFL works is he's a 2015 6th round pick, and then he gets traded to Seattle for a 5th round pick and a 7th going the other way as well. So he's never going to have that day one prestige to his name. He's also shorter, not the fastest.
Right.
And he's coming after, you know, like a guy like Earl Thomas. And so,
yeah.
I mean, he's not a Hall of Fame player, don't get me wrong. But he should be in the Ring of Honor.
Yeah, that's probably not happening because they didn't have enough playoff runs with him. He's that caliber of player. If he had been with the team for like 8 years, maybe. You know, I don't think. I don't know. Those things are just so exclusive.
You don't. A 3-time Pro Bowler doesn't get into the Ring of Honor.
No, you gotta get like 5 or 6. If you don't win a Super Bowl or anything, you're not getting in the Ring of Honor. I mean, he's that caliber of player, but you know.
Okay. Well, I tried. Right.
We shut that down quick though.
Yeah, chat's like, nope. Quandre Diggs gone, and finally, not a surprise, but it's opened up the old can of worms for the last time. Jamal Adams released. So obviously, he suffered the torn quad tendon in 2022, came back in 2023, got concussed in his first game back, and described how that same injury that he'd somehow recovered from or came back to play from in the off season was grating, was biting, and he could feel the pain. And visibly, while at the start of the year he didn't look fully back, but he could move more. Visibly, as this year went on, it just looked like it was impacting him. He wasn't moving, not even close to his peak. Whereas you could say at the start, he was, getting towards that. And then he got shut down towards the end of the year after a particularly disappointing, was it the 49ers game, Griff, where he got beat over the top by Deebo Samuel?
Yeah. That was really the only, go ahead.
Well, and so you kind of had to release him because of just how much money he was going to make here, and just the massive question mark over. I know Pete Carroll said this is the type of injury where in the second year back, you probably are looking a bit more like it, a bit more recovered, but it was a tough one.
Yeah. It was not a surprise at all, a no-brainer decision to make at this point with the injuries, just not being able to stay on the field, man. Like, he couldn't play football. He could not, and the systems changed so much on him too. That's the other variable here. He couldn't ever settle into his role for a prolonged period. When he did, I mean, he played good football, like the 2021, the second half of 2020, and then 2021. I mean, he played good football and playing two pretty different schemes and coverage. Obviously,
Yeah,
we saw something of him in 2022, and then in 2023, given the context you had up until that Cowboys game, he was giving the scheme what they needed, and then it's like you don't even need to squint to say that. The results reflected in the aggregate. Seattle was playing good defense for a big chunk of this past year, and Jamal was part of it. The dam broke. Other things went to hell, as we know, and the defense ended terribly. But I mean, he wasn't even really an active contributor to the defense falling apart. I mean, I remember being so confused after the 49ers game. Yes, he gave up the touchdown to Deebo. It's a really bad play. He needed to open up to it quicker. It also shows a lack of traits. Then in the same game, people are celebrating Julian Love, and I'm like, he's given up more yardage in this game than Jamal has. He's given up 2 over routes, and then the interception he had was a tipped ball that was errant that the guy was wide open on. So I always found that confusing.
And why that all happens really is from the jump, the Jamal Adams kind of narrative in Seattle was completely broken and warped because Seattle gave up a crap load of picks. They gave up, let's remind ourselves. So the Jets sent Jamal Adams and a 4th-round pick in the 2022 NFL draft. And the Seahawks gave up Bradley McDougald, who became a kind of a fan favorite, 1st and 3rd-round picks in the 2021 NFL draft, and a 1st-round selection in the 2022 NFL draft. He was also in a contract year, which meant in 2021 they signed him to a 4-year deal with a top value of $72 million, $20 million signing bonus, and $38 million guaranteed, making him the highest paid safety in NFL history at the time. And yeah, that was a lot of money, and that was a lot of picks. And I feel he was always going to be judged through that lens, and it was just a broken lens. And then there was this narrative which came out of New York that after playing in a Greg Williams defense where they sent so much pressure, he was a blitz boy and he couldn't cover. And that narrative was kind of further stoked by Pro Football Focus's charting of coverage, which is a flawed, like any metric is flawed, but I don't think the charting companies have yet found a way to properly chart zone coverage. I don't think, and they themselves would acknowledge that charting zone coverage responsibility in general is very difficult.
Yeah.
But what would end up happening is we'd watch the tape and see Jamal Adams doing some really good stuff, like playing in a weak hook and running with the 3-receiver vertical, as he failed to be able to do against Deebo Samuel and kind of got caught looking in the wrong spot. He'd do that every week really well. He'd play really good cover 4 quarters technique. He'd do all these things really nice. And yet the PFF grade would come out and it wouldn't match what we'd seen. Now, occasionally he'd lose a one-on-one in man coverage against George Kittle. A lot of safeties will do that, and you kind of need the pass rush to be popping too. But he was at his best when he was healthy. Like 2020, he has 9.5 sacks, which you might think, oh, why is a DB getting sacks? But he has 9.5 sacks, which was massive for Seattle, because go and look when they acquired him, look at their pass rush, look at their roster in 2020, look at who they had up front. They had absolutely nothing. They'd been really poor at how they'd acquired players. They had LJ Collier and Benson Mayowa, Alton Robinson, and then the interior was Jaron Reed, Poona Ford, Anthony Rush, Brian Monet, and there was DeMontre Moore. They needed a dynamic front player to kind of fix or help out the pass rush. And he was huge for that 2020 scheme, not just with the production, but it's with the year they started running a lot of bare fronts, and he fit that as a box safety. It's wild to me also, the narrative around box safeties not mattering, when this is a franchise, like, where people are not paying attention. This is a franchise where Cam Chancellor played most of his snaps in the box, sometimes similar to Jamal Adams, but more kind of down on the edge, because it's Cam Chancellor, not Jamal Adams' body type. But and was really damn good at it, and got the accolades for that. But when Jamal Adams does it in his way with his style, that's not okay. He was a massive answer for Ken Norton Jr. in that 2020 scheme. Then 2021, Seattle's thinking we got to evolve a bit more. They moved to a bit more too high coverages. That requires Adams to play a bit more conventional safety, which people were saying he couldn't do. Well, all of a sudden, he starts doing pretty damn good playing in a quarter. A lot of the time, they're running a bare front up front still, and he's asked to fit the tight end and the C gap, or fit in the A gap, play some weak hook and take the 3 receiver like he failed to against 49ers up and back across the field absolutely fine, or play a quarter and play aggressive to a tight end and come in the C gap run fit. And he was really good at that too, so much so that Seattle's defense in that year, 2021, they allowed the 11th least amount of explosive plays percentage-wise in NFL history, 8.27%. For contrast, the 2014 Legion of Boom was 8.23%. And if you remember, the issues that year, and kind of in 2020 also, were the lack of a pass rush impacting the ability for the zone coverage to cover the check down effectively, and the ball would get checked down. And because the pass rush hadn't forced the check down to happen earlier on, the zone would get deeper and deeper, particularly underneath zones, and then it would get checked down and make the tackle. But it would go for a lot more yards. Teams would dink and dunk. When it get to the red zone, good scoring performances from that defense because of, there's less space for the check down to start hitting, and that you can play a bit more aggressive and all that sort of stuff. So Adams was really, really good in 2020 at being a kind of more of a box guy who can blitz and cause issues with the bear stuff. And then 2021 moving to that too high stuff. And that's just based off the tape. Okay, yeah, he could have caught some more footballs. Remember 2020, he dislocated his finger week 2. He got his shoulder banged up for that wild card game against the Rams, which was so unfortunate because then he did get beat by Cooper Kupp. He was in very tight coverage, but he couldn't extend his shoulder because he's playing with a torn labrum, right?
Yeah.
Like, tough.
I mean, it's truly been like horrible injury luck. Like that will be always what stands out to me the most when reflecting back on Jamal. It's like he played really good football in New York. He had a very interesting skill set. He was not just a blitzer. He came to Seattle, showed flashes of all of that, but could not sustain it. The man's body was broken every single season.
Then 2021 was like a fairly healthy kind of ish year for him. Am I right with that?
2021, he ended up getting shut down after the second 49ers game.
He tore his labrum again, didn't he?
Yeah, his shoulder.
Yeah, and then
but just to illustrate that, like that year when Jamal Adams was on the field in quarters, the Seahawks were ranked 7th in the league in quarters when Jamal Adams was on the field. When he was off the field, they fell to like 20th.
And the narrative was so broken that you had defensive coordinators saying it took him a while to adjust to some of the coverage stuff that we've been doing, maybe. He played so much quarters in college
and in New York.
It's just bizarre. The whole narrative around him was just
he's not, you
so
don't use
frustrating.
him in coverage. Sam Gold, who he's a blogger,
good guy,
writer, good guy. He has a YouTube channel. He did a really cool breakdown on Jamal Adams, and he was like, what Jamal Adams is good at is he's a pretty good quarter safety. He's an excellent blitzer, a really good run defender. And then I remember even him tweeting is like, Jamal's played deep before. Like, he did it in New York a ton. Like, Aranda coached him at LSU. What is Aranda known for? Tight four, quarters. That's what Jamal does. He plays quarters, and then when it's time to play one high, he's in the box, which is what any strong safety does. And you want to take advantage of his pass rushing skill set. He can plug the run. He can roll over and find the crossing routes. Can carry tight ends. Not the best tight end ever. Like, he wouldn't be one-on-one with Travis Kelce. That's why every team tries to double cover Travis Kelce and Gronk when they can't. But it's just the whole thing was out of control.
You got like the play against New England where I think it was Leno Hill playing in the post.
Evacuates the post for no reason. Yeah.
Who was it?
Delano Hill.
It was Leno Hill. Yeah. They're playing. People would blame Jamal Adams because he's matching his seam, but he's thinking he has some semblance of post safety help. And Leno Hill just vacates the post, just completely busts his coverage, does not lean 60-40. And then his receiver went flat anyway, so he should have got back in the post and helped Jamal Adams out. And people were like, Adams can't cover when he's in very, very good coverage on the play. He just needs a bit of help. And maybe his ball skills at the catch point could have improved slightly, but he was expecting help. You'd get plays where Seattle clearly wasn't matching or asking the down guy at the line of scrimmage, which was Adams in that case, to run with a wheel route. They hadn't done it previously in the season. But, it's very funny to go, Jamal Adams messed up there and should have caught the wheel route down the field, when actually they weren't matching that. It's on the corner or whatnot. People came in with their disgust at the trade. They transitioned that to some of what they perceived as bad play. And I don't think they... I think there may have been some more things going on there when it comes to certain people's real kind of vitriol for Adams. And then 2022 arrives. It looks so promising when he gets into the backfield. He almost sacks Russell Wilson as a spinner roll. Let me have a sip of water. And instead he suffers a torn quad tendon. And in 2023, first game back, concussed, and you get the real kind of sad end to it, where there's the tweets at a Jets beat reporter and his partner. And
those were some pretty nasty tweets that did not need to be made.
No, that was too far. And yeah, so it's just a sad story. But it just is frustrating that at his best, Jamal Adams could do a bit of everything in a defense, and was the kind of chess piece they were looking for. Did they overpay? Yes. Was there justification that they didn't know how the combine would be because of COVID? A bit weird, yes. Although if you look at that first round, it's a bit odd. It's not very good. But it's a guy who's a first team All-Pro in 2019, second team All-Pro in 2020 with Seattle, and then 2018. And but for injuries, I think would have stayed playing really good football. And just an unfortunate situation. But we say unfortunate. He got paid a heck of a lot of money, and he holds a defensive back sacks record. But it's a real what could have been. Him and Diggs, it's a what could have been, because they were close. And that 2020 team, I really did believe that was it, because they seemed to have a lot of good defensive answers. What I've just described is one of the most impactful players on the defense, but their most impactful player on the defense got hurt. The offense absolutely collapsed, and they somehow lost in a wildcard game to Pete Carroll's nemesis, Sean McVay, and whoever that bloody quarterback was. Who was that Rams quarterback?
Wolford.
Yeah.
Wolford.
Yeah. Hey, I remember no free ads, but after that I drank for that it was around Christmas time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I got given a bottle of Westland's Westland American single malt, which is Seattle single malt. If you want to get in touch with the podcast, Westland. But yeah, I drank quite a bit of that. That was a tough one. Hey, KGK, you're in timeout.
Matty, you need to be more lenient. You're always playing bad cop, do they call it good constable, bad constable over there?
PC. Did you know we call our cops PC?
No, why?
I think it's a rank. So it's like police. I don't know what it stands for. Police constable, police cadet, maybe. I don't know.
Interesting.
Is it? Anyway, where are you going with that, Griff? Come on. Don't get distracted.
Wait, where am I? So wait, what are we? I forgot.
Well, we kind of just talked about Jamal Adams and
yeah. Oh well, I mean my mind, like, I'm not too broken up about this. Like I am, Jamal in my mind was like a goner ever since they IR'd him. It was like, in looking at his contract, strong chance he wasn't going to be on the team as soon as he tore his quad, right? Looking at the contract, looking ahead, even if he comes back and plays well, I mean, you got to do something with that contract. So this is that something. I'm on record. I wanted to keep Diggs. I thought that was the best football move to make. I still, completely understand the thought process and intention with moving on. Like, I get it. So with all that said, they have a big question of, like, now safety is in need. Like, safety is as desperate as linebacker is now. The entire middle of your defense, and it makes you think, like, okay, you can go find Bradley McDougald in free agency for $2 million. Like, you can get quality safety play, especially if you coach well and everything. So, and that's kind of what Seattle's MO has been at strong safety until the Jamal trade. I mean, like, look at Julian Love. Like, Julian Love, in theory, could be better than he was. I mean, I thought he was.
Hey,
decent.
he had an All-Pro vote.
Yeah, he had he's a Pro Bowler. What am I talking about? But so the point is, like, you can be okay. I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying presently you've got holes at safety. You don't have two starters at linebacker. You've got one starter at safety. We really should be viewing the safety situation as three starters with how Macdonald uses big nickel, just like the way Seattle did. It's like you've got to have three guys. So there are two vacancies at safety and there are two vacancies at linebacker. If they cleared up all this cap room and don't bring back Leonard Williams or go make an equivalent splash signing and don't bring back Jordan Brooks, that's where I'm going to start to be scratching my head. And I feel like the heat's actually on them, because I get it. First year for Macdonald, first year for Schneider running the show. But there's still enough meat on the bone here to go win, I think, 11, 12 games. Just like I thought the same thing last year, and they didn't meet expectations. So my expectations are the same. You fired them because they didn't win 12 games when they should have won 12 games. They have the roster to win 11, 12 games, or at least they have the resources to get the roster to win 11, 12 games because they're moving on from some of these players, right? So it's like, I mean, you have to live up to the expectations here. I'm not interested in doing the honeymoon thing where it's like, oh, it's his first year. Yeah, it's his first year being a head coach. There's got to be some leniency, but there should be high expectations, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's like we said in the previous podcast. If they don't finish with a winning record next year, given the talent on the roster, It's not forgivable. Now, suddenly the defense is looking real shaky. There's one too many holes for my liking. Griff, we could get, as you've theorized, we could get Mike Jackson playing safety. Now, I was looking at what Mike Macdonald did with, I want to say he's called, it's not, I wanted to call him Lyndon Stevens. It's not Lyndon Stevens, Seahawks legend. Brandon Stevens, I think is the name. So he was a safety and then he moved to corner. But if you go through McDonald's time in Baltimore, he's always stressing how he wants the secondary to be as versatile as possible and like be able to do a bit of both. And so maybe we get Mike Jack as a quarter safety, Griff. That could be the thing.
I mean, he has the density for it. I think he has the feet for it.
The pedal, the style.
The change of direction, like short area explosiveness.
And he hits.
He hits. He likes to hit. I think he's fast in a straight line. I mean, he's not twinkle toes. If he was, he'd be an all-pro corner, right? With all the other things we just said. But like a lot of those body types, like Bradley McDougall was a good safety, but like he wasn't. He ran a 4.65. He had a 7.33 cone. He had an average broad jump, an average vertical jump, and he was a good safety. So Michael Jackson actually has some similar tools. Obviously, that said, what makes a good safety is what your brain's doing, where your eyes are and everything, and stuff like that, all the little micro movements. So I mean, transitioning from corner to safety is a big deal. Don't get me wrong. But I mean, I'd be curious to see how they view that. I mean, they're going to need bodies. They got to get bodies on there somehow.
Because what we're talking about here is even before this news about Diggs, we were saying nickel's kind of a low-key need because Spoon got down to 178 and maybe you want him at left corner. If nickel isn't a need and you're saying Spoon is still your full-time nickel, well then, great, brilliant. Although I still find, they would want a bigger option, I would think. Like Baltimore, they played a lot of Kyle Hamilton, who's obviously a bigger type of nickel, and then they had a smaller type of nickel, which they occasionally dabbled in. I'd be really shocked if they don't have a big nickel. But anyway, if they're saying Spoon can do it full time, then left corner is kind of a low key need because you got Trey Brown and Lance Boykin. Is Mike Jackson going to be a left sided guy again? I think his best football comes on the right. Or then on right corner depth is Andrew Whitaker behind Reek Willen, who's kind of a question mark and definitely needs someone pushing him. So that's one need, either left corner or like a bigger type of nickel. And then the other need is you can draft a safety and work him in as the nickel. Maybe Kobe Bryant they view as the big nickel, but we've already kind of explained the issues with that. And yeah, they've got Jarek Reed. Jonathan Sutherland was a guy who Pete Carroll enthused about last year, but they kind of need two DBs now. It's a long way of saying it, but they need two DBs. And they need to invest, I would say, fairly significant resources on one of those DBs. Now, safety is one of those positions which is not as highly valued, generally speaking, in the league. There's always positional value discussions, as we saw with the Jamal Adams thing, as we saw with the Kyle Hamilton thing, where it feels like when he got drafted, everyone was like, ooh. And then there was a lot of people who seemed kind of desperate to make that a pick that didn't really work. And look how that did work.
I mean, the Ravens, I mean, if the Seahawks think that Pete Carroll's gone, they're finally free of overvaluing the wrong positions and stuff. What Mike Macdonald came from in the Ravens, they pay safeties, they pay linebackers. They cycle corners in and out because they believe in press technique. They believe in that being fairly fungible. So just get ready for them. Yeah, they cleared a bunch of money at safety, but that's because those guys are old and injured. So be prepared for like a lot of those resources going back to safety in the next couple of years here. So, and linebacker, like they're going to build up the middle of the defense again. The most important player is literally an inside player in McDonald's scheme, the nickel. The nickel is an interior player, and not to the point where it's basically a safety playing nickel, not a corner playing nickel. So, yeah, it's I mean, Marcus Williams has an $18 million per year cap hit right now. So, yeah.
Yeah. Now,
He's a safety,
on this,
by the way.
yeah, thank you very much. Good safety as well. Very good safety. What
Yeah,
school did he come from? I think he was at the Senior Bowl. I think he was at the Senior Bowl that I went to. No, he wouldn't have. Utah 2017 Senior Bowl. Was I at that one? I think I was. Anyway, very good tape. And so it's proven. Anyway, so the good news is from a Seattle perspective is there's quite a few safeties available, but I don't know if there's any where it's like, oh, yes, please. Now, the big name is Geno Stonegriff.
Right.
He said how he's not giving a hometown discount in free agency. He's kind of, I mean, he's a safety, right? He's kind of earned himself a pro day. He's 24, so he's a bit younger. He's a 7th round pick out of Iowa in 2020. And after being cut and playing for the Texans briefly, he returned to Baltimore and kind of took that chance and made the leap. He's more of like a high type safety, like, but I've also seen him used down in the box a bit. Kind of does a bit of everything for them.
Yeah, he plays left and right, which means
Yeah.
like free safety, like strong passing strength safety and passing weakness safety. They haven't played quarters. They haven't played cover 2. He's not down the line of scrimmage though. So between he and Love, there's some interchangeability there. He would definitely be like a sound fit. If you're going to bring over a guy from Baltimore, he makes the most sense to me, price point wise.
Yeah. But I don't know how good he is. I should probably watch him a bit more, I guess. And Brandon asking, is Geno Stone on a restricted free agent tender? No. I don't think so. He had 7 picks in 2023, of course. But what they will be looking for from safeties, ideally, is that ability to play left or right, high or low, a bit of versatility. They can just do a bit of everything very well, and then they're smart and can disguise. So, well, if it's that simple, so quite a lot of things required. Connor Oldschlager, doesn't he have serious run D problems? Are you asking about Mike Macdonald?
I think
He might
Geno
do.
Stone.
Yeah, Geno Stone. Yeah, he has some missed tackles, I think.
Yeah. I mean,
Kind of funny, isn't it?
it's a little ironic. 200 pounders coming from 20 yards out, typically
Who are short.
great tacklers. So
super chats. Preston, thank you so much. I get why the Seattle Seahawks cut Quandre Diggs, but I'm also sick of fans pretending like Julian Love is superior in any way. Yeah, that's
thank you
well,
for the donation, sir.
Could be Kopi.
I feel like I'm being too harsh on Love. Like I have no ire toward him. I'm rooting for him to play better. I thought he was kind of a Ryan Neal equivalent player. Both of those players.
You weren't big on him when they signed him because I think I had to be like, hang on a sec, Griff. Like I think he's better than Neal.
Yeah. So though, well, excuse me, Matty. Ryan Neal was PFF's #1 rated safety in 2022. Walked out the door for $1 million, and then was one of.
How could the NFL do that? Yeah, that's the same company who people point towards when they say Jamal Adams was a terrible player.
And
anyway,
PFF thinks Quandre Diggs was like, what was his coverage grade? 40. All right, Matty, do you remember when we were watching the Bengals game and we were like, who is this
Logan
white
Wilson.
linebacker? Yeah, who is this white linebacker who's shutting down entire drives by himself?
Yeah.
And we're like, let's look up his PFF.
Wow, look at this. Look at how he's pushing with the 3 to sail drop under the corner route. Wow, that's some serious fire zone work.
He goes from the cross window to the dig window and dagger, whatever. He had a 56 grade in coverage for that game. Just nonsense.
Yeah, but Griff, he was letting them run open.
We have absolutely zero zero bias toward Logan Wilson. Why the hell would we? We don't even know who he is.
Well,
I mean, we've heard of his
we
name.
did defend Cody Barton, Griff. Could be a, you know.
But it's just like we have no agenda. We have no reason to think. We have no reason to cape for Logan Wilson. We're just watching the tape like, oh, hey, this guy's shutting down. This guy's forcing checkdowns.
Well, then we like search his name on Twitter, and it turns out that like there's a massive argument between like Bengals Twitter of people who are saying like, yeah, he's good, and then people are like, but his PFF grade's bad.
Very familiar. Every fan base is.
All right, another super chat. Hogan. I just want to show support, appreciate the effort and content. Thank you, Hogan. Yeah, if you got a question, we've been talking a bit since that point. Fire away. Fats McClure. I'm not sure you guys picked up on this, but I'm unhappy about Quandre Diggs' release. Fats. Sorry to hear that. Hang in there. Thank you.
We feel your pain, Fats.
It's okay. Maybe. All right. So.
We have a lot of live viewers. What's up, guys?
I know. It's great. Hey, live viewers, like the video, subscribe to the channel. This is also a podcast. Just search Seattle Overload, subscribe, give us a 5-star review. Follow Griff at CMikeSpinMove. Follow me at Matty F. Brown. Chat. If you got any more questions, bang them in there. Do it.
Do so quickly because my laptop is at 20% and I forgot to grab the
classic. It's the hour mark. Like I said, chat, it's always the hour mark. So, yeah. Griff, to what degree are you concerned, or do you think this signifies Pete Carroll's out the building? There may not be as much of a always competes strategy, at least this year on the roster. And like how with Jamal Adams, they're taking all the dead money this year in 2024 on his contract. They signified it as a pre-June 1st release, not post-June 1st. Is this kind of a case of 2024 is going to be a bridge year, or like more of a retooling year, not necessarily an all-in year, and 2025, perhaps with a new quarterback, is the year that they're going to go for it? Do you think there's any credence to that, or?
I don't think so, because I don't think they wouldn't have. They would have made more efforts to move on from Geno this year if they were trying to do that. I think this is just more.
Well, you could say they tried pretty. I mean, they were working the shifter.
But I think that they're going to try to field the most competitive roster they can this year, while simultaneously feeling good about their cap situation in 2025. I think they're trying to bridge those two things. So with that said, and they have resources, like they've got a lot of cap space right now. I think they're trying to clear up future cap while maintaining roughly the same talent level. And I think that's doable. Like, that is possible. They just need to succeed, right? And they totally understand that. That's what they're like. They understand, like, we could screw it up. They also understand that there's, totally plausible paths for finding, I mean, really, you could even find 100% of what your safety output was last year if you view, player X as a positive and player Y as a negative and add it all up together. You can find that. You can get it through Love improving, and you can get it through Geno Stone and then drafting a safety that you really like, and you could be roaring for all we know, like that's totally possible. I'm not putting any of that past them. So they're just wading into unknown territory at this moment. Mike Macdonald, I mean, he's got job security, right? I think it was he signed a 6-year deal, which is the longest deal for a first-time head coach, I think. But either way, like, he came into Baltimore, or he came back to Baltimore after Baltimore had a down year with Wink Martindale, coming from the same general philosophy of defense, even though he has his own style. And he wanted to get off the ground right away. Now, the first 8 games in Baltimore 2022 were not good. In fact, they were really bad. But the final 8 games, they found it. They found their sweet spot. And then they were able to sustain that in 2023. I'd say one of the biggest things of that was no one got hurt. No one important got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
That can't be understated. But so Macdonald definitely, I would think, believes like, hey, we can go win. We can have a top 10 defense next year. I mean, that should be his mindset. I don't know if that's the most likely scenario, but I think it's plausible. I don't think it's unrealistic. So no, I don't view this as a reset year. I think they're trying to win games.
Yeah, big few months for all of that stuff. So just real quick on the questions, and I've just remembered there's some other Seahawks news we need to talk about. So we'll just rattle through these very quickly. Thank you, chat, for the questions. So Connor asking about favorite safeties in the draft. We need more tape. We need actual all 22 stuff to do that. And then there was a question about whether the Adams and Diggs cap space roughly covers Brooks and Williams extensions. It should do, right? Because they've freed up basically $28.7 million in effective cap space. They obviously need a bit to shuffle around. They have Monet as a lever they can pull. $6 million, I think that frees up. They should be able to get it done now. Obviously, you can spread out the cap hits. No dead money in 2025 from Jamal Adams, etc., etc.
Right.
And then people asking about Tyler Lockett. Nothing, I don't think, but we'll have to see. But I'd be surprised. 31 turns 32 in September.
I think they just sit on Lockett's contract for this year.
Yeah, they've kind of done their thing, I think.
Yeah, agreed. In terms of
that would make me really question what the approach is.
Right.
Brandon's saying they can't move Monet because he can't pass a physical. Yeah, they'd probably have to wait for that all to play out. I don't know the exact rules.
Good point.
Okay, Brandon. So finally, David, good to see you. Finally, Griff.
Yeah.
KJ Wright, the former linebacker for the Seattle Seahawks, announced on his own podcast, KJ All Day, that he's joining the San Francisco 49ers as an assistant linebackers coach. The 34-year-old is heading to the Bay Area to coach Fred Warner, Trey Greenlaw, and company. Under, ironically enough, and why it's ironic, is Nick Sorensen, who, of course, was with Pete Carroll in Seattle. He was the Seahawks assistant special teams coach from 2013 to 2015, their assistant DBs coach in 2016, and their secondary coach from 2017 to 2020. And Quandre Diggs was pleased for him. And yeah, it's kind of a mini, I know, is it Brandon Staley's an assistant head coach there with Kyle Shanahan?
I don't even know if I saw that. I just saw like a senior defensive role or whatever that means.
Right. So there's a kind of a little Pete Carroll tree forming down with the 49ers. He is an assistant head coach, Staley. Okay. They obviously will probably have a bit more quarters with Staley there, but they've already been using quarters, so it's just another mind. But it's hilarious to me how Kyle Shanahan, offensive genius, probably the best play call in the NFL, he's choosing for his whole time to run Pete Carroll systems of defense. And it's very obvious in just how their corners play, how their front plays, how their backers align, how their backers drop. Like, it's the Seahawks stuff just with a bit more middle field open. Not that they didn't have that in the book back in the day. They just didn't need to use it.
In the right hands, it's a very much a bang for your buck scheme. And I think that's how Kyle views it. He also knows he has the talent archetypes at the right position. He has his Leo. He has his linebackers. He has his nickel to play cover one when he wants to play cover one. It's a very sound scheme. Like, that's what when Shanahan on that podcast was saying. He was like, it's just so sound. Like, on paper, it's hard to beat. He went 2-8 against Ken Norton Jr. No, 2-6 against Ken Norton Jr. Ken Norton Jr.'s defense was boring. It was boring to a lot of people. They didn't like the aesthetic of it, but it was very sound. Shanahan's offense is built on you're taking advantage of the unsoundness of your defense. It's really not a surprise that those matchups didn't go great for him. Also, it was built
He
on
struggled to run the ball on them.
He struggled to run the ball on them, and Seattle's play action defense, as much as everything else was bad at times over that stretch, the play action defense was quite good. Now there was a game or two where he gets them right, but in terms of play action, but like it's built on having very good cover linebackers. Clearly, Shanahan values linebacker coverage. Because why wouldn't he? He builds his entire offense off of exploiting bad linebacker play. What's the antidote to that? Good linebacker play. That's why he has Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw there. That's why, the guys getting promoted through the ranks have been linebacker coaches. Now Sorensen's DBs, but it's in the same breath. So, it is funny. It's funny that he chose Nick Sorensen over Brandon Staley. It's pretty funny. And the other thing about that with Staley is that, like we said this before, when the 2022 Chargers played well, Staley was living in a part of his book, his Fangio playbook, that overlaps with what the 49ers are right now. So I actually was kind of surprised that he didn't choose Staley, just because like Staley can live in an even space, 4 down front cover or 1 high team if he wants. He can do all that. But I don't know. Maybe he knew he would lose Staley quickly. Maybe he wouldn't stick around forever, and he thought he wanted Sorensen to have the experience, and having Staley like there as not a mentor per se, but like a coworker would be beneficial. I don't know. But yeah, I found that amusing. But I guess your initial question was about KJ though, right?
KJ Wright. KJ Wright.
KJ Wright though, right? So he supposedly interviewed with Seattle. I wonder if they said no or if he said no.
When though? This offseason?
Yeah.
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 I mean, he spent a lot of the I know there's going to be turnover. He spent increasingly critical of like players, like calling out certain players that if you're then there in public in the media, it was very media, I know he was in the media, but it was a little, what did you say, Griff?
Odd.
Yeah, slightly like, I was like,
I think he just got radio brain. He got podcast brain. It changes you.
It won't happen to us.
Yeah. Where else?
So I don't know, like the relationship there. I know he's the coach and that's the dynamic. It might have been weird, but honestly, I think
it makes sense for San Francisco though, because it's the same system that he played in.
And I have no idea how good a coach KJ will end up being. Like he was a very smart player and very like clearly cerebral and just understanding stuff, just the way his indicators and his understanding of what plays he was getting, and his film study obviously translating on the field, and maybe that helps. But there's more to coaching than that. We'll have to see. It'll be fascinating. I think he would probably have gotten a chance with Pete Carroll. Maybe it was too close to his retirement, and maybe they felt it was a bit funky, the dynamic. But I'd be shocked if Carroll hadn't given him a chance like he did with Will Tukuafu and whatnot, if he hadn't gone on a very strange night of Twitter, early November 2022, anti-Semitism relating to the Kyrie Irving stuff. And that probably meant joining the team in 2023 would have been a bit weird. Not that it didn't stop him staying on Seattle radio and the flagship station. So anyway, good luck to him in San Francisco. It's going to be interesting. It'll be very funny if Quandre Diggs ends up there as well.
Yeah. Indeed.
Great.
Indeed.
Brilliant. Thanks, Griff.
We'll see if Diggs makes a lot. San Francisco makes a lot of sense for Diggs, right? I don't know if they have the money for it. I actually have no idea what their cap situation is like.
Yeah, I think every year I'm like, this is the year. But because they don't have a quarterback contract, it never quite is. I think they're close to being like.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I wonder if there'll be late players for Cousins. That would be a disaster if that happens for us, if you're a Seahawks fan.
Yeah, like an actual quarterback.
Yeah.
Would the Kirk scale, would it rise, Griff?
No, he'd
Or
still
is
intrinsically be 1.0 Kirks, but it just
okay.
means the multipliers of the system around him would produce a result that is
What's the
such.
Shanahan multiplier on the Kirk scale? Have you uncovered that yet? Well, Griff's gone. That's the laptop dying. Let me just finish. Hold on. I'll just do that. So Monjombo asks, what's the difference between a Leo and a rush? So they're obviously both edge rusher positions, and Leo was what the Seahawks used. The Leo traveled with the 3 technique. He was the best pass rusher on the field. And so in under fronts, he'd align away from the tight end. In over fronts, he'd align to the tight end. And there you go. Now, the difference between a Leo and a rush, there isn't much. Rush is what Macdonald just calls it, basically. Now, because they're like a 3-4 base team, there may be situations where that rush drops a bit more into coverage, but then I don't actually think so. Generally, they want the rush rushing, and they want it to be the best edge rusher. So, for instance, last year, the rush was Jadeveon Clowney a lot of the time, but also they had some pretty good rotations. So, Odafe Owe, he played the rush, and Tavius Robinson, sorry, he also played the rush a tiny bit, but Robinson was more of a Sam type player, and Owe would play some Sam too. But Clowney never played the Sam because that didn't suit him. In fact, sometimes the Ravens, their Sam would be more like a Malik Harrison, who was more like a linebacker type player. So, yeah, it's basically the same. But very good question, Monjombo. And I'm going to have an article out on that, like looking at the types of players. Another example of a rush, like historically, would have been, let me just get it up because I did some research. I believe it was Pernell McPhee. So that's can be a bigger type of player, like more of a getting to 270 pounds, 6'3". If you're a good pass rush, you can do it. But they really need to be able to pressure. Whereas the Sam, it can be a bit more coverage oriented, and they still need to be able to rush, but it's more about their run defense and setting the edge. Then when you get into nickel, then you just need 2 damn good edge rushers who can do a bit of everything, and you just play your best 2, generally speaking. Okay. Griff's left me. I'm going to leave you guys. But before that, follow the pod at Seattle Overload. Follow me at Matty F. Brown. Follow Griff at C Mike Spinmove. Follow Ty at Ty Dane Gonzalez. I know he's got another interview with Jerry DePoto, so check that out. And please do like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here, stick around, and share it with friends. So many people tonight. I'm kind of doubting the veracity of that number, but we'll see. But thank you so much if that is how many people here. Always appreciate you. Thank you so much. We'll be back later in the week with... I guess Griff's not here to decide, so I can do whatever I want. We could probably... let me know what you want to see. We probably need to do a Senior Bowl at some point. Suddenly, safeties is a massive need, isn't it? And maybe we could dive into some linebackers. I know we're going to probably do a format of like, hey, here's this damn good prospect. This is what their tape is. And just do like maybe 3 of those in a podcast. Maybe we'll have more Seahawks news too. But anyway, thank you guys. Have a great rest of your day.